We at Lionhead in Guildford started the development of Fable II on the 21st of April 2005 with just a few key people. The team rapidly expanded, and by January 2007, more than 150 people were working on the project. We followed the team during this time, and we'll be taking you behind the scenes, showing you not only what motivates them, but also explaining the features to expect in Fable 2.
Back in 1998, I started a little company with my brother, Simon Carter. We had a dream of creating a fairy tale role-playing game, but we didn't want to go the usual geek route of unpronounceable weapons and things. We thought, well, why don't we give somebody who's never seen a role-playing game before something that they can get their teeth into, a story they can understand, something they can relate to, something which is a much more emotional experience than the usual sort of stat counting exercise.
Fable 1 received a lot of acclaim for breaking new ground, and in Fable 2 we really wanted to innovate further. We wanted gaming to be truly emotional.
Because we deal with love every day, if it's faked on screen, it can be very jarring. It can be very obvious that it's wrong, and so it's very difficult to get that right.
Love's actually a very, very important emotion to Fable 2. For the first time, you can be male or female. We're putting much more of an emphasis this time into family relationships, so you can have a wife and you can have a child. And frankly, unless you're going to pursue emotion, there's really no point having a family and children.
You can choose to marry anyone you like in the game world, and so we're not scripting who you can fall in love with and why they'll fall in love with you, so we've got to try and make that realistic.
We're not talking about love in the soppy sense. We're talking about the fact that you care for something in the game, and even more importantly, things in the game care for you.
One way is through the introduction of a dog that loves you. It'll follow you around and serve as a companion on your adventures throughout Albion.
Firstly, and maybe most importantly, I wanted to show the quality that we were putting into the dog in the game. Everybody who sees that dog, they will say, that's a dog. The second thing is, I wanted to really get across to people how brave we're being with this dog. What we could have done is given you this dog and made him controllable by you. We give you no control over the dog. Just think about that a second.
What we do is we split up the way people think about the hero into like 5 separate axes.
Even though there are 5 axes of opinions, there are actually 10 extremes of those axes.
No control over the dog. You haven't got a dog button. And a lot of people would say, that's just mad, man. Well, how can I be engaged with something? What we've said is, you control the dog by playing the game. You control the dog by worrying about you as a hero. So it's not aggravating to you. I don't press a button when I go out with my dog. I think the very fact you don't control him makes him feel like something that has a mind and that has an agenda. And that agenda, first and foremost in that agenda, is his love for you. His willingness to sacrifice himself for you. His need to please you in everything that he does.
Fable is, of course, an action-adventure role-playing game with an important emphasis on the story. This is where the emotion plays an obvious role, and your decisions, your feelings will be paramount as you make the hard choices along the way.
If you look at the history of other visual media, cinema, for example, the addition of love and sort of emotive content has been a really big deal. If you look at Charlie Chaplin, he introduced emotion into a film called The Kid, and suddenly cinema was elevated to a new form of art. I'm not quite saying we're there yet, but I'd very, very much like to think that we're kind of in the vanguard of groups who are interested in this side of games rather than sheer thumb candy.
Actually, it's about drama. It's about you feeling, when you're playing Fable, things that you've never felt before. And if love is one of those emotions, we've won.
When we're developing a game, things go wrong, and every developer's nightmare becomes reality: bugs. From time to time, we stop developing new features and instead focus on fixing bugs.
Right, this week we're having a bug blitz, which is something we do now and again. The reason for that is that ever so often the build gets a bit clogged up and messy, and we have some reliability problems. So this week we've decided to have everyone sit down and work through some of the bugs.
I'm fixing bugs at the moment, some rather nasty grouping bugs in the editor.
We've got hobs which jump out of foliage, so we've got ninja hobs.
Combat was a very important aspect of Fable 1, and Fable 2 is no different. We spend time on research and development at Lionhead, and during one of our experiments, we discovered an exciting new way to move forward with combat. Why not put everything on one button?
Well, having one button for combat in Fable 2, it kind of makes my job both harder and easier. It's harder in a sense that there are fewer things a player can do with his hands, so you have to make sure that of all the enormous varieties of actions that the character can do in the game, you always get the one that is most appropriate for where you want to be. So you almost want the game to read the player's mind and do exactly what he intends to do at that specific time, which, as you can imagine, mind reading is quite a difficult thing to program.
The whole idea about it is to try and leverage everything that you can to make the combat more exciting without actually changing the combat itself.
Our goal is not to make combat look realistic, it's to make it believable. We want you to feel like you're in the game, hitting the enemies. It's not a realistic game. It's got creatures in it, it's got hobs, it's got gigantic trolls, you use magic. We want the combat to all fit together in this world, and we want the world to be believable, but it's not realistic.
These guys have made stuff out of crap, so bones, bits and pieces, whereas these guys kind of fashion bits and pieces out of metal.
The sheer size of the game means that some of the team members will have to work late into the evenings to fix their bugs. This relates to all aspects of the game, not just combat, and some of the team members will be facing more bugs than others.
The target is for all team members to clear their Pry 1 bugs this week.
I'm debugging the particle system and why at the moment, the particles are really big and fat and ugly and they don't die out, so right now that's what I'm doing.
The magic system in Fable 2 is similar to Fable 1 in you get a range of spells for you to choose when to cast. Where it's different is we've tried to make it fit in with the whole one-button combat ethos of Fable 2. So we're trying to make spell casting accessible to the casual player, but with depth for the harder core player.
The most important factor in making combat believable is the reaction of the enemy. If they react in a way that's incredibly satisfying, it's just fantastic.
And if you're close enough to the enemy and you press attack, you get to smack their head off a log, which is great. And then sets it up nicely for a finishing move.
Working out all the aspects of combat in Fable 2 is a huge task with many different factors that need to be taken into account. While some of us might know what it's like to actually wield a sword, it's a completely different matter to translate that into a convincing animation. And so in the early development stages, research is hugely important.
We did loads of research. We looked at videos, we looked at games, we just happened to find people around the studio that had life-sized weapons at home. Not completely real, but there were some life-size metal swords brought in, which it was really useful because we could go out into the car park and video ourselves doing specific moves for the hero. We got a sword master in called Richard Ryan, who showed us how he would actually fight with a sword. Quite a scary guy. He had a guitar case full of weapons, and didn't mind getting quite close to us when he was demonstrating swings and things.
What we have here, we can see that this is the last month. The blue bars show us what's been fixed, and the red ones, all the bugs that have gone in. So the last 2 days, we've had a peak there, which is good, which means people are fixing things. They're also putting more bugs in, which isn't so good.
Fable II is set in a fictional world called Albion, which bears some resemblance to England during the Victorian times. The art team played a vital role in bringing the Fable world to life, as did the level designers who created the places in Fable II.
What I did at the start when I was asked to put the art style for the game together is I researched every aspect of the art of the game and split it up into environments and creatures and made sure it was consistent with the design vision for the game.
We have, for instance, for the architecture in some of the towns, we've actually got somebody that's a trained architect here. We've got others that have worked on the previous Fable.
When we were doing the environments, what you've got to do is split up the environment team into architectural and organic for a start. There's definitely people that are more organic than others. Quite a few happies on the team.
Well, currently one of the tasks I'm involved in with Fable 2 is foliage, and that basically means creating all of the green stuff that you see within the game. Any of the plants, any of the ground cover, any of the flowers, any of the bushes, I have some part in producing. The foliage and the local detail, as we call it in Fable 2, is very much more detailed. We're trying to go for a lot more on every front, really. So we've got a lot more different kinds, we've got a lot more different feels, and generally we've expanded the foliage as much as we could.
Oh, you're not filming me messing about with flowers again, are you, Sam? Oh, no, let's film me doing something else. Oh.
What else do you do?
Loads of things. Oh.
All the areas in Fable 2 were originally mocked up using the Fable 1 engine. This allowed the programmers to create an editor that could be used by the level designers to start building the world of Fable 2, but using its own brand new engine and assets.
What we do is we create the tools that allow you to build games.
We make all the tools that are used for the development of Fable 2.
So one of the things that's a real struggle for game developers is fitting all of those assets into memory and onto the DVDs. What we've done is develop some compression routines that squashes down the data so that it will fit in the available memory, and we've done this with animations. We've managed to squeeze those down to just 1% of their original size.
We have support for tools that allows us to create assets very quickly.
So look at the chart. And there it is.
Are you fixing more than are coming in? Or?
Check it out. Today we're just ahead.
The fact is that this game is absolutely massive. We have so many levels that are so much bigger than in the previous game. That requires constant honing and improving of existing tools, as well as developing new tools, because we constantly want to find ways of improving our pipeline.
The way we would design an area, this tends to be slightly different depending on the type of area it is, but what we start with is the plan. Then what we do is we actually white box it. In a very simple art package, we'll just rough it out, get our scale, make sure all the critical dimensions, to ensure that the navigation systems will all work. And we do that fairly quickly in a program called SketchUp. And then that gives us a rough version of a region or a pub, for example, which we can give to the artists. They can take straight into their art package, and then they can make it look really nice.
Albion in Fable 2 is much bigger than the Albion that we've seen before in Fable 1.
In the first game, the world looked amazing, but it was kind of frustrating because you couldn't go everywhere you wanted to go. You can go anywhere now. You are not fenced in any way.
Is everybody working like that?
Yeah, everyone except him.
It's not very good because it's in a special engine mode which is designed to make it look better. It's not working at the moment. Okay? Don't look at it. Well, don't film that. Film this. That's what you need to see. Numbers.
Programmers and artists are two completely different breeds, and tensions between them sometimes grow high. That's not to say they don't get along, but when a tool doesn't work and development grinds to a halt, this is the ideal time for the artist to go into the park and get some inspiration to beautify Albion.
Unfortunately, Sam, you've come at a really bad time. We've all got major technical issues at the moment and can do no meaningful work. I can pretend to work. I do that all day.
Well, you know, I work with mainly artistic people, and let's face it, they're never going to be satisfied unless they have one big red button that builds the whole game. So I'd say they are reasonably satisfied, but they're not happy.
Well, when we looked at inspirations for the game, we tended actually not to look at games and more to do with beautiful looking films, beautiful forest scenes. I mean, you've got all the martial art films that came out with a hero and what have you, with the swirling leaves going around the characters.
I think the distinguishing thing about the world of Fable is that there's an introduction of colour. If you look at most next generation games at the moment, though they're beautifully crafted, they seem to be awash with, well, grey.
The idea was that we wanted to incorporate clockwork, get away from the medieval times and more into the age of highwaymen. Everybody agreed, you know, that Peter, Dean, you know, always sat in a room and pretty much agreed that this was an exciting way to go.
Look, it's you, monkey boy.
I'm not going thin.
He's got hair like that.
Temples.
Like that. That's Chris.
That's because I need a haircut.
You can use that before and after. Well, you're going to shave that bit there. Shave
What?
it off.
Yeah, why not?
The whole thing, like.
No.
But they should. Otherwise, you look like a monkey.
Can we carry on with degenerate triangles?
The entire audio aspect of a game is often undervalued or even completely misunderstood. Actors need to be found who can lend their voices to characters. An orchestra needs to record the score written by a music composer, and technology needs to be put in place to support all these assets.
I composed all the music in Fable II. Most of it was recorded with sketch samples, first of all, which we then converted into scores. And the scores were then given to an orchestrator, and the orchestrator then makes those orchestra friendly. And we went over to Bratislava and recorded it all with the Slovak National Symphony Orchestra at the National Radio Hall there, the concert hall. When we came back from Bratislava, we decided we were going to record all the choirs. We had a male choir and a female choir who were called the Pinewood Singers, and we had a boys' choir called the Tiffin Boys' Choir from Cambridge. On top of that, we had the Celtic instrumentalists, people who did all the folk and Celtic instruments for the region called Bower Lake. Music really is something which brings the player into the game.
The ambient sound has progressed quite a long way. In Fable 1, we were able to place sounds down on a map, say here is a river, here is a set of trees, this sort of thing. But it was always sort of constrained by the amount of CPU power and memory. So we went back to the drawing board and we found ways of expanding the systems available to the sound designer, the tools, the processes.
From beginning to completion, the voiceover production lasted over 6 months. The first casting sessions and discussions started around August 2007, and we finished our pickup recording run at the end of April, beginning of May, and it took another good week to get everything to the game. To ensure the best possible quality in the voiceovers, all the 4 voiceover directors have got a background in theatre or TV.
Fable II feels like a Monty Python movie directed by Tim Burton. A dark fairy tale story with a humorous, light-hearted British twist. We want this story to be one of the most memorable and emotional rides of recent years. Finding the right voices for this was not an easy task. However, Fable II stars an impressive selection of talent.
Hello, young man. I couldn't resist it, I'm sorry.
An unusual element in the average video game.
Your appearance is beginning to change to reflect your actions.
So long as your heart continues to beat, all I require of you is obedience.
Well, hello there. Always a nice surprise to have company. I don't get many visitors to my little coastal paradise. Especially ones who might well redefine a man's concept of paradise.
What's that?
Nothing to worry about.
Oh, yuck. Well, I hear that's lucky. Like finding a 4-leaf clover.
Why did you do that?
It's all right, Doggy. We're going to Lord Lucian's castle.
Why did you do that?
I've never seen someone use will before. Oh, good one.
Why did you do that?
My greatest hero is quite sentimental answer, is my mum. She was recently passed away, but she was my hero. She's an amazing person. Yeah, that would be my hero.
Creating games is a massive undertaking. You may be surprised to hear the scale and breadth of work that lies behind their creation.
We have people like Dean and Peter who will sit down and start to say, I've got a great idea. I want, the hero to go into this, incredible kind of area, and he's going to battle all these things and whatever. And that is that's where you start off.
For me, the most pleasurable part of being a designer is probably that very, very first week when your limits are entirely boundless. You're not thinking logically, going, what would be absolutely fantastic here? What would the player enjoy the most? And you get really, really excited and worked up.
We've got, a number of incredibly talented artists who work here, but one of our principal concept artists is a guy called Mike McCarthy.
A good piece of concept art should take a basic idea that you've been given and imbue it with all the atmosphere possible.
And then you have about 4 years of every member of the team telling you, for one reason or another, why you can't quite do that. And everything becomes compromise after that. So it's all downhill from the top.
The bug team is currently, the QA team is going into overdrive. They're finding a lot of bugs at the moment. The red bar is how many bugs they've found, and the blue bar is how many the team have fixed. So for ages we were catching them up.
That board is not enough to hold all the bugs we're doing, so I'm putting half of them onto this board.
Put a little bit more to it.
So far, we've looked at how art moves from conception to implementation. Once the artists are finished with modelling a character, the animators take over to bring them to life. All the animations in Fable II were created by hand.
Well, we do have a pipeline, basically, where artists will create a character and then they will pass it on to our technical animator, Emilio, who will then rig the model, and which is basically giving the shell a skeleton inside so we can move it and create our animations with it.
And the hero is trying to kill a bandit. Ooh.
We tagged in the end, gesture tagged in the end, 5,000 lines in about 10 working weeks. which I think we would have never been able to do if we had done bespoke animation.
In total, over 200 characters were animated, over 50 voice actors recorded, and more than 350,000 words of dialogue spoken. Also, more than 10,000 assets were designed, ranging from weapons to perfume bottles. During the 3 years of development, 15,000 takeaway meals were ordered, and nearly 8,000 hours were spent or wasted, depending on how you look at it, in conference calls. And believe it or not, time was found for 13 babies to be born.
What we've done with Fable II is just make sure the team is really broken down into much smaller teams and lots of people managing smaller parts of the game, so that you try to keep a really strong team culture, and I think that's worked really successfully for us.
Hi, this is a strawberry that someone put out with the Friday Munchies, and honestly, what the...
Hello. So anyway, why are you late with all your work?
Because I'm lazy. I spend all my time eating clippos.
Because everyone's waiting for you to finish everything now.
Yeah, it's not like
It's not good enough, Michael. Get your coat.
Yeah, get to my desk.
And get to your desk.
Which is here.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be it.
Eventually, the development of Fable II must come to an end. Currently, we've got 52,127 bugs. It's summer, the sun is shining, but we're all indoors. Who knows if we'll have enough time. Hopefully, by this October, it'll be in the shops.
At the moment, we've got a lot of challenges, but we've got plans in place to solve all of those. So I think, although it's difficult at the moment, and we haven't got a great deal of time, that we are going to get all the technical challenges solved before the end.
78 things doing to it. It's quite a lot for the stage.
Over 1,000 of that. 1,000? Yeah. Yes, it was all the inventory issues. Well, most of them. There's another 500 to go.
He's not walking.
I'm just making some legendary weapons at the moment.
It's all good. You can mess up the economy as much as you possibly want to if able to.
From what I've seen today, I really like the clothing, and there's just ridiculous amounts of combinations.
It's about 350,000 words of spoken dialogue.
Is it going to fit on the DVD? It will eventually, absolutely sure, for sure.
It will fit on the DVD, I guarantee it.
We'll squeeze it one way or another.
You can't lean back any further.
How many bugs are there at the moment?
We just tipped over 5,000 today.
You get a green bunny that you have to stick on your desk if you break the build.
Nearly there, but we'll see. I guess when I see the latest build, what it looks like. Exciting 21 minutes and 10 seconds remaining to the new build 202.
It didn't work, but we'll get it working.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow. There's always tomorrow.
Is it going to be finished, Peter? It's going to be finished, that's for sure.
Of course it's going to be finished. We're this close.
It's shaping up to be something a bit special. We just need to nail these bugs and we're done.
It's a lot of work to do, and it's very scary.
Everything's falling to pieces as we talk. Okay, so sorry.